What's up, people, and welcome to a video I've been wanting to do for a while. But this is going to be a quick and dirty Warhammer 40K for beginners type thing. And, you know, I'm not going to go so deep into the lore like other people do. This is more of a quick rundown of the 40K universe for beginners. So if you have no idea what 40K is, trust me, I am going to help you as somebody who is immersed, as you can see behind me, in the franchise, fandom, whatever you want to call it. Either way. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And there we go. Welcome to my Warhammer 40K for Noobs video. And, you know, this is just kind of something I slapped together and found a bunch of wallpapers of stuff that I liked that seemed relevant for what we're going to be talking about. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's go ahead and go. Alright, so in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And you have the Imperium. The Imperium is basically humanity that is ruled over by the God Emperor, basically a dead guy sitting on a golden throne, being sustained by sacrificing, you know, countless numbers of psychic people. And humanity has already conquered the stars. You know, everything's all over the place. We're going to get into why things are the way they are at the very end of this, but for right now, all you need to know is that humans good, I don't care what anybody says. Imperium good, I don't care what anybody says. And at the same time, humanity is on as I mentioned at the beginning, a constant battle for survival with all sorts of aliens, right? Now, in this picture, obviously you have your Space Marine, that's Reboot Gilliman, or Reboot, however you want to say it. In the back, you got a Commissar over there, along with some Custodes. And this is just looks like a picture that somebody slapped together, but I'm not sure why there's a whole bunch of Russian generals in the background here. But, you know, the Custodes are basically the Emperor's bodyguards. Commissars are exactly what you would expect them to be. Either fall in line, you know, in the military, or they'll put a bolt round through your head. Then you have Primarchs, which Gilliman is a Primarch, the big guy standing right there. Primarchs are basically these superhuman sons of the Emperor that are almost godlike, at least to human beings. And your average Space Marine is basically their offspring, for lack of a better word. Now, despite what you may read or hear on the internet, Space Marines are only male. So, all Astartes are male. Nothing has changed yet. They're just male. That's all you need to know. Right? So you got your poster child, the Space Marines. They fight for humanity. And as we move on here, you also have the Sisters of Battle, or Sororitas. Now, these are basically fanatical battle nuns that fight for humanity and for the Emperor. There's a whole reason that it's strictly female in the Sisters of Battle. But again, this isn't a deep dive on the lore. I'm sure maybe at some point I'll do a more in-depth video about that. But right now, all you need to know is that there is a female faction in Warhammer 40K, and that is the Sisters of Battle. So, you ever hear anybody say Sororitas or Sisters of Battle, they're basically talking about these kick-ass battle nuns like you see here. Moving on, the Warp. Now, mankind has traveled across the stars, and the way they do this is via warp travel. And the warp, you can, if you've ever seen that movie, what is it? Now it escapes me. Event Horizon? That one. Basically, the warp is hell, right? So anytime humanity travels through the stars, or anybody for that matter travels through the stars and needs to get from point A to point B, they have to travel via the warp, which they use the Astronomicon, you know, the light of the Emperor, who basically guides everybody where they need to go safely. Whereas if they didn't have that, or something called a Geller field, the demons would swoop in, eat everybody's souls, and turn them into BDSM playthings in the case of Slaanesh. But that's neither here nor there. All you need to know is that mankind travels through the stars via the warp, and that the warp is the domain of demons and what are considered the evil entity beings of 40K, which are the Chaos Gods, which there's Nurgle, Khorne, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch, but we'll get into that later. We're going to keep moving. Speaking of, as you can see here, those are the 4 Chaos Gods. Or at least represented, anyway. So starting from left to right, you have Khorne, which is basically the god of death, destruction, murder, violence, you name it. Next to that, you have Slaanesh, which is the god of excess, or goddess, depending on how you look at it. Of excess, pleasure, desires, stuff like that. Hedonism, as you could say. And then moving on next to that, you have Tzeentch, who is basically the god of fate and weird things that happen with that. The god of change would probably be a better description. And at the very end, you have Nurgle, who is the god of death and decay, everything gross, right? So these 4 gods are constantly fighting each other and vying for, the top spot and seeing who they can corrupt in the most, beneficial ways, at least to them. Now, at some point, some Astartes, or Space Marines, did fall to Chaos. In the slide here, these are basically some of the champions. Again, left to right, you have Ahriman of the Thousand Sons, which were basically sorcerer Space Marines. They follow Tzeentch. Next to that, you have Typhus, who is a champion of Nurgle. Then you have Karn the Betrayer, who is obviously a champion of Khorne. And at the end, you have Lucius the Eternal, who is a champion of Slaanesh. All these guys have been gifted things by their chosen deity. And, they're kind of badass. Depends on how you look at it. There are some people that just won't touch chaos. Me, I love chaos. I mean, not in that sense. I love chaos in the sense that some of these guys have some really cool aesthetics. And chaos players are typically pretty hardcore about that. So, moving on. We have, on the left side of this picture, we have the Mechanicum, who basically believe that this is part of humanity, by the way. I know, there's robots in this entire picture, but the ones on the left are good and the ones on the right are bad. Also, depending on how you look at it. So the Mechanicum basically believes that it is something called the Omnissiah, which is a type of, I guess you would say, a machine god, right? So they bless the machines and pray to the machines, everything, disgusted by their human flesh, so therefore they're augmented with all sorts of cybernetics and what have you. But still a faction of the Imperium, still technically the good guys. On the right side of this, you have the Necrons, which are basically zombie space robots that are very akin to the Egyptian pharaohs of old, I guess you would say. That at least that's the type of aesthetic. But the Necrons, again, not going too deep into this. All you need to know is zombie Egyptian space robots. At one point, they shed all their skin. The pharaohs took over, I guess you could say. And now you have what you see in front of you. Then you have the Orcs. The Orcs are giant, violent, green, space fungus men that basically get stronger the more of them that there are, and the more things that they fight, and very firmly believe in the power of imagination. So, for instance, if you paint something a certain color, it's going to go faster. They think that, therefore it happens. Now, that's not saying that everything they think is going to happen, but if enough orcs get together and decide that the God Emperor is actually a 8-foot tall tarantula, it may or may not occur. We don't know. Now, the orcs have their own version of God, which is Gork and Mork, the twin gods. And all these guys want to do is fight things. Plain and simple. I mean, orcs are a simple species outside of the whole fungus thing. But that's all they want to do. They want to fight. They want to go wherever the biggest fight is. And they're going to keep doing it. And you probably have to shoot them and stab them and hack them into a million tiny pieces, which probably won't kill them. But they're going to be fighting the entire time. There are various types within the orc kingdom, I guess you would call it, that I don't really feel like getting in. That you have Noblars and Gretchens and all kinds of different ones, but just know, orcs, green, fungus, guys, violent. Then you have the Tyranids, which I know you can't really see on this picture. But let me, I'm going to minimize myself just a little bit here. There we go. Make me a tiny bit smaller. Your Tyranids are your run-of-the-mill giant alien space bugs that want to devour the stars, humanity, and everything that goes along with it. Along with the Tyranids, you also have the Gene Stealers faction, or rather the Gene Stealer cults, which are basically, again, I don't want to get into much of a deep dive, but basically humans that have been corrupted or infected or bred to be absolutely tied to the hive mind that is the Tyranid. And at some point, they eventually get tired of hiding, and then a revolt will occur, and then the Tyranids will show up, and then everybody dies. But, like I said, not trying to turn this into a lore video. This is more of a deep dive rundown type thing. And just know giant space bugs that kill and eat everything in order to absorb the biomass. Moving on here, I am going to... There we go. Then you have the Tau, which are space fish communists. Yeah, space fish communists that believe in the greater good. And as you can see in this picture, they do have some pretty kick-ass mech warrior type suits. But the Tau pretty much believe that they're superior to everybody else. And that tends to cause problems. I don't want to talk too much about the Tau. Not very many people like the Tau anyway. I don't like the Tau. Then you have the Eldari, the Eldar, which are your space elves, right? Because what type of sci-fi fantasy setting would it be if you didn't have some sort of elf? And that's what they are. You have the Eldar, the Eldari, and these guys are basically just trying to keep to themselves. Also, think that they're superior to everybody else. They don't really want to get involved in shit, but sometimes they have to. Again, many different factions within the Eldar hierarchy. You have the Harlequins, but we're not going to go there. Just know that they're space elves. You have good space elves, and then you have bad space elves, which are the Drukhari. Now these guys, for sake of this video, we're going to call them BDSM murder elves. Because that's pretty much what they are. These guys thrive on pain and inflicting suffering, and they are typically raiders because they're harvesting people to sustain them by either murder, torture, the R word, among other things, and usually somebody's going to end up in a gladiator pit getting torn to shreds by a bunch of witch elves. But yeah, so good elves, bad elves, in this case, very fucking bad elves. And then the Votann. The Votann are, the newest, I say newest, faction that Games Workshop has introduced. All you need to know about these guys is rock and stone and that they're basically space dwarves. And that's... I can't even think of a better way to describe them other than space dwarves. You got space elves, you got space dwarves. Obviously, the two go together, right? Now, the reason things are the way they are, for the most part, has to do with the Horus Heresy, which is a very important part of the setting, despite what some people may say. You had your main guy, Horus Lupercal, not Lubriderm, which is the big guy with the red eye on his breastplate there. Horus was the Emperor's favorite son. Now, obviously, all these guys standing together, not obviously for you, but obviously for me, these guys standing together are all Primarchs, the genetically superior Astartes, you could say. Horus decided he was better than everybody else, than the different legions, which each Primarch had their own legion, or own sons. Basically split into these two factions, two sides. You have the side that fought for the Emperor, you have the side that fought for Horus and Chaos. These two clashed together, everything got all messed up, and now things are the way they are. It's a whole 54, 57 book series called the Horus Heresy, and Yeah, to say that it's not an important part of the setting would be a lie. In fact, if you're getting into the setting, I would highly recommend starting with Horus Rising, and then you kind of have some backdrop on why things are the way they are, and why some people are fanatical about their legion of choice, right? And, I mean, Ultramarines players, obviously. So, there you have it. There's a quick and dirty video on 40K. Like I said, I don't really want to go into too much detail on this. This was just a fun, quick thing to go over. And that way, you can watch it in under 10 minutes and understand when somebody says, hey, I like orcs. All right, you're going to know those are the violent green fungi men. Or, hey, I like Drukhari. Then that person probably needs to go see a therapist. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, go to your local game store, I guess. I don't know, it's expensive.